Okay, so let's think a little bit about the context we find ourselves in. I'm going to think about this in terms of opportunity, and I don't mean that in terms of opportunist. It's not about us trying to make the most of people who are struggling. What an opportunity for us to get people into our churches or a part of our online communities. It's an opportunity for us to root the gospel in something that is facing so many people in today's society. Pioneering is about saying, how do we begin new works in new ways, in new places? And even though many people have struggled with their mental health for many, many years, at the moment, culturally, it seems a real opportunity for us as a church to be a part of a big public debate, a big public response, putting the gospel at the heart of where people find themselves. So we're not being opportunist, we're just stepping in and sharing the good news of Jesus, modeling what life in its fullness looks like for those around us who might be struggling. So I'm going to share with you some statistics that you may be familiar with. You may have your own understanding of what's going on, reference points for yourself. Maybe you know folks around you that are struggling. Maybe you've pioneered something yourself. But here's some thoughts from some mental health charities and Office of National Statistics. So Mind are warning about the second pandemic. So yes, we're all wrestling with COVID and what it means for us as our churches, communities, homes, as individuals. But Mind is saying the more and more people are expressing their struggle with their mental health and well-being at this time. So as well as the vaccination program, we need to be preparing ourselves as a society for the mental health pandemic that's already hitting and will continue to grow over this coming year. CALM, that's a suicide prevention charity. CALM stands for Campaign Against Living Miserably. They predict that 10 million people will need more support after and during this time of COVID. The Office of National Statistics, this was March 2020, and I know that the figures have grown since this report was made, but 27.1% of male deaths and 16.7% of female deaths are from suicide. And the biggest thing, the thing that's most likely to kill you if you're in the age bracket between 18 and 40 is yourself. That's the statistic. Suicide rates are on the increase in the UK, and CALM are talking about the helplines during COVID. They answered getting over 100,000 calls. They are finding that people are turning to them, not just those that are expressing suicidal thoughts, but also those who are just talking about their health worries, their concerns, the stresses that are placed upon them at this time. And so here are some of the statistics that are around. 1 in 4 people have or will experience some kind of mental health problem in their life. This could be anxiety, this could be severe depression, bipolar disorder. 1 in 6 people report experience anxiety in any given week. So everybody, perhaps you yourselves during this time felt anxious or depressed because of what's going on. In total, 45% of adults feel occasionally, sometimes or often lonely in England. The 2 main groups that are affected by this are the elderly, but also young people are really struggling with loneliness. They are the group who would share most, who share that they struggle the most. Actually, more than the elderly. Actually, it's the young people, young adults who have left home and are in those early kind of 20s to 30s that are expressing most loneliness. And 5% of people will say they feel lonely all of the time. And then 125 people a week take their own life in the UK. That's quite a shocking statistic. Actually, it's getting towards proportions of people dying from some of the cancers that we know a lot about. Actually, there is a lot of people are taking their lives. And then, as I said earlier a few moments ago, if you're between the ages of 18 to 35, the most likely thing to kill you is yourself. Perhaps you're familiar with those statistics, perhaps you've seen them before. Today, we're not trying to say that we all need to become mental health care professionals, that we're the ones that are there when someone's mental health is escalating and they need help. Today, we're reflecting on how we might be communities of hope for those who are struggling with their mental health, how we might be, just for a moment, prophetic to a world that is struggling with its mental health and with its well-being. That's not about us Christians presenting that we have the magic cure in the gospel, but it's saying that when we ourselves are in difficult places, our faith is what helps get us through. Our faith is something that supports us and puts rhythms within us, and that as communities and as individuals, we can respond to those around us. Well, I was in a meeting just this morning reflecting on CALM's helpline, and it's really interesting that there are certain peaks at which they have very big spikes in need, and they were talking about how they might be set up for and have the ability to cope with those moments of stress in society. One big peak was when the Love Island presenter Caroline Flack took her life, and they remember that back in 2020. There was a 27% increase in people accessing their helpline, and likewise when the COVID restrictions were changed around Christmas, again there was another big spike. So this is about us saying, how can we as churches, as communities, be ready to respond to those stress points in society? How can we be communities that are there for those who are struggling and have room to be there in these key moments, these spikes, as well as that day-to-day level of mental health which many people in the communities around us are struggling with. I'm going to hand over now to Anna, who's going to share a few thoughts on what churches have been doing, ways of beginning to respond to the statistics.
Hi everyone, lovely to be here with you today. So I'm going to share a few of the experiences that I've had of how I integrated wellbeing into the work that I was doing. And at first, I suppose I wanted to emphasise that we don't forget the first part of this webinar that was all about our own wellbeing, and what we are not wanting to do is just put more on your already heaped plates and it to have a negative impact on your well-being. If you're feeling overwhelmed, then we certainly don't want you to be taking on lots more that's just adding to your own stresses and strains. But hopefully we can give you a few ideas of things that may help you to help the people around you with their well-being. So I came into post 18 months ago, developing a project in Leeds city centre. And the first few months I was just talking to people, as you do, finding out what was going on. And my idea for the project was about contemplation and activism, and how they're two sides of the same coin. Any Richard Rohr fans here, I'm sure, will be well acquainted with that idea. And I really felt that that was where God was moving in Leeds city centre, and something that we could offer as a unique thing from the church. And then very soon after I created the vision, we were locked down, and wellbeing was not particularly part of the original vision. But from speaking to people as they were stuck in their homes and adapting, I just felt really called that wellbeing was going to be key and important, and was complementary to the vision of the project anyway. And as we couldn't meet in person and everything was happening on Zoom, I was aware that spirits were lower, and we all create coping strategies in our day-to-day lives, and for many people those had gone with the changes that everyone was experiencing in that time. So a few simple things that I did were we started to create more reflective and meditative resources, including some in podcast form, so people could download them to their phones and use them wherever they are. And in meetings and group work and things I facilitated, I started having a mindful pause at the beginning, a bit like what Kathy ran for us at the beginning of this session, but maybe slightly shorter depending on the meeting. And that I found that it helped people to be present and be concentrated in this space, but also acknowledged the stress and difficulties that they were having generally, and that it was okay to do that. I'm hoping to put a resource together of some simple scripts of that kind of thing, just for a couple of minutes, if that would be useful. An alternative, depending on the kind of space or the length of meeting, I found was asking everyone to share how they were that day. Just a quick check-in. Everyone says a sentence, or I'm feeling a bit anxious today, or I need a little bit of encouragement, or I'm feeling quite hopeful. That can be a good way of encouraging vulnerability and people accepting how people are and an awareness of that. And my feeling was that it created an environment of kindness within the meetings, and actually that's what a lot of people needed within that time. Also, our activist events became craftivist events. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the Craftivist Collective, but we, during lockdown, have created the Leeds Craftivist group who meet monthly. And the whole idea behind craftivism is all about well-being. So it was started by Sarah Corbett, who was a professional campaigner who burnt out. And she found solace in her creativity and her craft, and spending time creating something beautiful, having time to consider the issue more fully. She found a really positive thing for her personal well-being. And then she started, as she spoke about it more, she found more and more people relating to that. And that's exactly what we found here in Leeds. So a group of us gather every month to do something creative together, to learn together, building community. But also we always create spaces for honest sharing and for times of quiet and stillness within those. But we're also changing the world for the better, which is what we love to do. And I found that I've been amazed by how positive the uptake of that is, and what a great group of people we have doing that now. I also adapted some simple wellbeing resources and offered out to local charities and organisations if I could come and lead just 5 minutes at the start, or 10 minutes at the start of their meetings together. So for example, I ran a mind mapping exercise with a group of refugee charities, their staff, at their network meeting, and just held a space for people to consider how they were in their working life and how they were in their life generally, because I think for an awful lot of people it has been a quiet time, but for others it's been incredibly hectic, and they just need a little space where they can find that quiet and that stillness and reconnect with what life is all about and what gives them energy and where they're getting that. And I found that people were receptive to spaces like that, and also people are concerned about their staff at the moment. So that felt like an area of opportunity, and that's something that I'm hoping to develop further over the next year. We're still a relatively small project, but we do have a big vision, and for us now, well-being is right at the centre of that. For many of the reasons that Matt explained earlier, this is a real area of need, and I believe that we as Christians have something unique to offer into that. So we're trying to take that opportunity here in Leeds. So a few things that I've learnt before I hand over to Tim so he can share. That to consider well-being right from the beginning of whatever you're planning. Imagine that a time when you've had a tough time, how would you feel coming to your event or your group? What would be helpful and what would be unhelpful? Are you creating enough spaces for community and reflection and caring for one another? Ask people how they really are and try to encourage vulnerability and honesty in the group. Make that a staple part of meetings, groups, whatever your work is, however you're running things, whatever your ministry is. And starting by being honest yourself, as much as you're comfortable within that space, that you are sharing where you're at. Leaving spaces of stillness and reflection wherever possible. Try not to see well-being as yet another thing you have to do, but just focusing on ways of making this an easier space and a more enjoyable space for you. And it's likely that that will be true for the people attending as well. And you also, a more practical point is you could share simple well-being resources, of which there are all sorts, that I'm sure we'll be able to share after this with your community. If you have a website or social media, just encouraging that conversation and encouraging people to start thinking about their own well-being and how they can look after themselves. I'm going to pass over to Tim now.
Okay, so hello everybody. Tim, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're part of the Blackbird project. So we are in Huddersfield and we roam around Huddersfield pretty much. The project was about people, and what we did was we discovered mindfulness and become Blackbird project mindfulness, but it was never mindfulness was the thing, it was the vehicle for what we did. In the last 6 months, we've been focusing much more on acceptance and commitment therapy as a well-being course. And I think that what will happen is, whereas the mindfulness has been a vehicle, the well-being courses will be much more intentional and directed. I would say is that since March, like the rest of us, we've been using Zoom, and for what we do, Zoom works. It's not a perfect thing, but it has worked. What I do is lead mindfulness sits. So you come along, it's quite free, it doesn't cost anything, and people come and practice mindfulness. I do mindfulness courses. And that's on Zoom as well. I do well-being courses. I do that on Zoom. I listen, so I'm a listener for a company. Their staff struggle, and I listen for an hour at a time. And those people, I've done some counselling. I'm not a counsellor. I've done some. Went to local college, did a level 3 down there. The aim, really, I guess, if we were looking both ways, and we were trying to look both ways, outside and inside the church, was try to get the church much more involved in what we did. If we could use mindfulness as a missionary tool, just to cross the gap, I felt that that would be really useful. The churches haven't taken it up. I guess there's lots of reasons for that. It hasn't happened. The other thing that we were going to do just before lockdown was that I was going to try to train some people up, the bereavement listeners. Where we are is that we have very few bereavement listening resources. So Crews are shut down where we are, and all we've got is the hospice, who are excellent, snowed under. So I was going to try and get people trained to be bereavement listeners, peer listeners, and bring that back into the church. So we're still on for that. It's taken a long time for people to think this is something that they can do. As far as Zoom goes and online stuff, it works. It works for us. And it works because the groups that we had set up originally, mindfulness groups, had established really good relationships. So they formed a core so that when difficulty did strike, they were very secure. They were safe. And they felt that they could be vulnerable with each other. And Anna mentioned that. She talked about being vulnerable and honest. And I think that's one of the lessons that I've learned. It's significant is that if you can get a group that's vulnerable and honest and non-judgmental, that they form themselves. So I haven't done a great deal of forming with any of these groups. They form themselves. There's no membership. They just appear, and they've evolved, and they stay. The way we began was a bit like Anna. That I spent 9 months just finding out what it was we could do. And the question was, what shall we do? The question wasn't, how can we take church outside the walls of the church? That has been instrumental, really, in what we've done. And I think it's been significant as well as to how the project has developed and has kept momentum. Our values were always about care, love, and compassion. So we took that with us rather than a template for how we could do it outside of church. I'm really aware that there are lots of ways of doing any sort of pioneering or reaching out or mission. Some people want to get everything sorted out and have church and take it with them. Our approach was just see what happens. If God is truly out there in the world, then come on, God, show yourself, and we'll join in. And that's what I think we've done. I hope that's what we've done. That's what it looks like. So we try, if you like, there's a biblical language to all of this. It's we've tried to restore the years that the locusts have eaten. That's pretty much the only biblical language that we use. We don't use that type of language in the groups or with people. We just create relationships. We create some safe spaces. In fact, what we do is we use their language, not mine. Church language dies. It's just what's happening for you. How does that feel? What's showing up for you? Originally, it was about trying to meet people's needs. And what we did actually, what I think part of the reason this has worked for us at the moment, and it's always stayed at a time, is that there were people inside the church who were struggling as much as people outside of the church. So people in my own churches who were anxious, had the NHS come along with emergency teams who were depressed. And I didn't know that until I did some visiting, and then was told that I had to go by the families because the NHS were turning up. So I didn't know any of that, even as their minister. I had no idea. So it crosses a barrier quite naturally, happens inside and what happens outside of the church. And I think another reason that it works is that people come each week because it works for them. There's no commitment, don't have to come, just come because they want to. So even in these situations, they're only small groups, but we'll get 30 at a time, between 25 and 30. They come because they like it. They don't have to come, especially on Zoom. They don't have to like it. Last thing I just want to say is that I'm no expert in any of this. My own view, and it's a personal view, is that when it comes to well-being, you don't have to be an expert. I think you have to be committed. I think you have to work hard. For a long time, I learned mindfulness. I wasn't a mindfulness teacher. I bit the bullet and became a mindfulness teacher, but much against my own desire. And the same with acceptance and commitment therapy. I'm not a therapist. I know that what it does is really useful and it works. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be qualified. Personal view. All you do need is a heart, is to examine your own values and go with it and just build relationships. That's pretty much what we've done. And as I say, every day is a chance where it won't happen again. Not here for the long haul. We're constantly trying to think, how do we go on now? What happens next? What's happening in people's lives? We can add some value to and walk along with. That's pretty much it. So I'll hand back Matt.
It's my first mute of the year, not the last, as someone said in a meeting recently. So we're going to go into breakout rooms again for another 10 minutes. It's going to be small again, and I'm going to invite you to reflect on perhaps the statistics and also what Anna and Tim have shared. Anna, did you have a question for that time that you wanted people to reflect on?
Hello, sorry, I was very slow at unmuting there. Yes, so the main question that we wanted to ask was, within your context, what do you think could work? So I suppose there's two elements to the question. What are the wellbeing needs within your community? And from what Tim and I have shared and what you know of your community, what could work where you are?
We've got about 10 minutes to close. It might be that you want to throw a question up in the chat if something's come up in your small groups while you've been talking. While you think of questions, there might be some, there might not be. You might have it all solved. If you want to share your good ideas, your web links that might be helpful, put them in there as well. You'll see a webinar link has come up for all the evangelism and growth webinars. If you want to register for the other ones that are there, we'd love to see you along at those. Please come along. But as we draw our time to a close, I thought it would be good to ask each person here, Tim, Kathy and Anna, your top tip. I know you shared a few. So yeah, Kathy, do you want to go first? As people are starting, what would you say the next step today might be for someone that's wanting to start something?
I think just get out and try different things and do them differently. I think the church has done the same thing for many years. So like, I have a vision board here, and it is stuff that anyone can do. It's like, yeah, my training can bring people in, but therapeutic storytelling, Zentangle, Mandela drawing, journaling, labyrinth, book clubs, mindfulness and meal, forest church, going for a walk. They're all really simple things that anyone can do, and anyone can do well, and use the gifts in your church. So if you've got someone good at storytelling, get them storytelling. If you've got a group of people that enjoy reading books, get them in a book club. If you've got someone creative, I'm doing some creative mindfulness sessions. It's using the gifts in your church and just getting out there, doing it, just getting out and doing it.
Thank you. So just picking up on a few of the comments, so getting on and doing it from Rob. We've got any thoughts on supporting people who struggle online? Any reflections, folks?
I walk with them. Go out for a walk with probably someone every day.
Right, okay. What about those who are getting in touch online? Any thoughts?
I suppose making sure your response is personal to them. I struggle to answer not knowing the wider context, because I suppose if it's in a group, I would probably try to take that conversation outside of that online forum, so that there was, you could have something a bit separate and they didn't feel spotlighted. But if they're reaching out and you're talking to them one-on-one, I think I would recommend, see where they're at and recommend helplines, different resources about what might be most useful.
Okay, thank you. I've been involved in a project called Calm Town, and we've had quite a lot of social media presence. And although it's not helping people directly necessarily, we've found it incredible, the organic sharing of our signposting to helpful information. There's just one that has gone to over 30,000 people, and it's just, for some reason, people have latched onto that, and people are accessing help through that one. So good signposting. It's not about people being overtly Christian in that moment, other than being a signpost to the help that somebody can get. So any good images that you can share. Calm, the mental health charity, are working right now on some shareable images and inspirational quotes that anybody can download and just be sharing on WhatsApp or in their networks. They come online next month. Okay, some of the other thoughts here. One of the things, so Gareth was saying, one of the other things we're talking about was permission giving to congregations to take up the opportunity to support. Is it not their role? Any thoughts? Tim, did you want to take that one about permission giving?
I suppose, yeah, I suppose if you're the permission giver, you've got a lot of power, and it needs somebody just to unlock. I think sometimes the churches, even when they get the permission, they don't really understand that the door's open to do something new. I think a lot of our churches are very happy just to be a church. Maybe if you can just find one or two people who are keen, and go from there, I would say. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it's really helpful. Thank you. There's a few other comments that started coming in. The thing I talked about was Calm Town. You can find the link to that in the chat. Chris has been sharing about the Youth Allotment Project, getting people engaging with the physical world, obviously in social distancing. There's something about being in nature. There's a big movement amongst nature and well-being at the moment. Clive has put on there taketime.org.uk, the meditations there based on Ignatian spirituality. And yeah, you've got a fan on there already, Clive. I know there's lots of other people that love it as well. What we'll do, we'll download this chat and we'll perhaps mail it out to folks that are there with slides and things like that. So someone's emailed asking for the statistics. So we're coming towards the end of our time together. One thing I would say is to echo what others have said is just be mindful and listen to what's going on in the world around you and respond. You don't have to be an expert. You just need to be someone with a huge heart. And I think most people that are here today see that sense. I would also want to just say this is an opportunity, I think, in the way that very often is the churches missed the green movement. We thought it was just for hippies, so we didn't get on board. Actually, this is a chance for us as a church to be on the crest of a wave, for our faith to resonate with the needs of society and the temperature of society right now. A real opportunity for us to do that. There's lots of resources out there to help you do this. One I think would be really helpful for folks to go and reflect on is just those 5 pillars of well-being, that sense of connect, be active, take notice, keep learning and give. There are so many things that we can gently connect our faith to as we engage with folks that are around us in our communities and lead the way on that. And also be willing to name it. Be willing to name mental health can be one of the best things we can do as Christians, not solve people's mental health problems, but have a willingness to say, we know people are struggling, I struggle too, can be such a liberating thing for people. And that might be the moment that we start from, to talk to our leaders in our communities, to be those that lead on mental health by talking to key leaders in the community and saying we're willing to roll our sleeves up and be there for people. Will you join us in that? So thank you everybody for your time today. If you've got any questions, then email them through to my email address and I can forward them on to the folks that have shared for us. My email is finchm@methodistchurch.org.uk. That's finchm@methodistchurch.org.uk. And thank you for your time. Share your stories with us, but go well and look after yourselves as you seek to look after others as well. Thanks everybody, and see you at another webinar sometime soon.